Well, you know what time it is. It's You Teach Fridays. Today I got the bryozoan reproduction and development. Just so you guys know, remember that video? It's basically like, it's not like a single organism, it's like made up of multiple organisms that make up like a giant mass. Like in this picture right here. It's not like a single organism, it's like multiple organisms. It kind of looks like it's like a single organism, but it's not. Okay, so for sexual reproduction, you guys should know by now. Like most of these animals usually have both sexes and they're hermaphrodites, and usually, like I said, remember that I said they're like a colony. They're like basically like each of them are called like a zooid. I usually like a signal animal. That's that usually makes up like a colony. And some do have separate male and female reproductive organs. It depends on the species. And basically, zooids will form eggs that fertilize each other within that colony. And basically, the sperm will enter the body cavity of a zooid that either has like a fertilized egg by going through like the subpermeable pore, and basically that's located like between the bases of the two afferental tentacles, or it's like going through the interauricular organ. And the interauricular organ is an elevated suprarenal pore that is on a pedestal. Okay, so I got like a nice little picture. You can kind of see like each of these, I don't know if you guys can see my pointer, are like zooids, like each their like own little block. Okay. Oh, okay. On to the next slide. Okay, there it goes. Okay, for brooding, for phylactomenomites, they're able to spawn their embryos in sacs that are made by invaginations of the body walls. In ctenostomes, the eggs are connected to the endometrial wall in order to become exposed when the polypid comes out. Oh yeah, the polypid is super important. It usually has like most of the organs and tissues in the zooid, and like it includes like the tentacles and the tentacle sheath and the U-shaped digestive tract. It also has like the nerve shells, and it's housed in the zoetal exoskeleton. Certain species have an ovocell which might undergo the first stages of development. The ovocell is basically one of the dilatations of the body wall of the Bromazea, in which the ova sometimes undergoes, like I already said, like the first stages of development. Yeah. Other mature female zooids would persuade the distal zooid could be a male or female in order to make an ovocell by specialization. And basically what I mean by distal is basically like, it's basically an organ that's like the furthest from the organ's point of attachment to the rest of the body. Like, think about the hands or feet are like the furthest apart away from the arms and legs. Usually the development of the larval stage would normally happen in a large egg that has been stored in the ovocell. And the oocyonal vesicle is an extension of the distal wall that covers the opening of the Bromazea. It basically functions as a placenta. If you don't know what a placenta is, it's basically like an organ that develops in the uterus during pregnancy. It basically provides like oxygen and nutrients to the growing baby. And it also removes waste too, so that's pretty neat. Okay, my guys, onward. Oh shoot, I can't always click in the arrow. I gotta click the slide. Okay, there it goes. Because sometimes it moves and sometimes it doesn't. Right now I am showing you guys a brooding and larval metamorphosis, and this, I already have it right here. It's on page 655. Like I talked about in the previous slide, so here we go. The ovocell hood. This is basically an ovocell with an embryo that has grown through the nourishment from the placenta. Like I said, like it's basically like an organ that develops in the uterus that supports the embryo to help him like nourish. And for B here, it's basically showing the drawing of a larva, and C through E is the metamorphosis part. So basically like the settling part. These basically showing when it finds like a pretty good surface that it wants to live on. It shows the adhesive sac, and that basically secretes like sticky material to basically help him stick to that substrate. And oh shoot. E is basically showing the adhesive sac now covering the whole ancestrula, and the polypod will differentiate from the blastomera. Oh yeah, nested it right there. That's the adhesive sac. Okay, so for development, you know how most organisms go through basically like a cleavage. Oh, that's radical cleavage, the holoblastic. Oh, and cleavage. Well, I mean by cleavage, I mean like close to it at least. And the phylolactolamates basically fertilize eggs. It goes into the brood sac, made basically by the crystal wall, and later through development, they feast on placentas given by their parent zooid. And their choroblastula, which is a type of blastia which is formed by the radical cleavage, and it lacks an endoderm and makes one or more polytoids through like a budding process. Oh yeah, the gastrulation is what the crenoplasty undergo in the process. In the process, 4 cells divide, so the pairs of daughter cells is like pulled into the blasticle, and basically at the end of it you get like a swimming larva. Most protozoans have a cipher knots, and just basically I have a picture of it right here. Heck, you can even see the cilia basically at the lower end of this like triangular shaped larva. And basically it's covered in like a shell, and the cilia, like you already know, it helps it like swim. They also feed by means of the U-shaped ciliated range, and which resembles and like functions as one side of like the triangle. They're typically made by free spawning. Cochronidate larvae are typically made by like a brooding species, and they have a ciliation. This time it covers the whole body. Sadly, these guys lack a digestive tract, and they have very short lives, so it's kind of sad. Polyembry is like a budding process where the secondary embryos are formed and then they turn into bud tetraembryos. And the splitting of sexual embryos into many areas are identical to each other, but typically they're different from their parents. That's why it's not really like asexual, since the main thing, they're different from their parents. Protozoan larvae are usually prototactic, means that they swim typically towards the sunlight, and during the platonic phase, they usually swim toward the bottom, so basically they become negatively protatic as they swim towards the bottom. Oh yeah, like I said in the diagram, they usually choose a surface to live on, and once they do, they'll invert their adhesive sac to secrete a sticky-like substance. And finally, for the last one, you got asexual reproduction. I got like a little diagram showing the little steps. And the first zooid undergoes budding to make daughter zooids. The first daughter of the cells comes in a chain-like series, plate or like disc. Budding arises on the elements of the body wall. I caught myself. Did I say arises? I meant relies on the elements of the body walls. And basically, Erostomates isolates the developing zooid from the parent by forming a partition, and the styloblast arises from freshwater bryozoans, and they're basically resistant to drying and freezing. And the parent colony will degenerate when feeding the stotoblast. Some can float while others sink, and they can either have hooks or spines, and typically these will attach to other aquatic animals or vegetations. Yep, this is my last slide, guys. Well, hope you have a good day, and I love you guys, and goodbye.